would love to dive back into it if you're ready.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
Okay, cool.
that'd
So
be cool.
you took over the business from your dad essentially around 10 years ago, is that correct?
Yes, slightly, yeah, slightly more. I think it's about
Okay.
12 years ago. So,
Okay,
yeah.
about 12 years ago. You had always had exposure to the business though, and it was a kind of official taking over the reins about 12 years ago.
No, there wasn't really any of that. It was sort of a slow, cook the frog story. I think sort of slowly boil the frog. Now, I think as my dad stepped out, there was a slow handing over of certain responsibilities, I guess, until you wipe your eyes, the shit out your eyes, and he's gone. And I'm like, oh, okay, now we're here.
Right.
And did you have complementary responsibilities in the company originally, and you just started assuming more of those, or it was like, hey, you're in one lane, he's in another lane?
I think when it started off, so my dad's, but he's an engineer and he's sort of focused on the technical aspects of mining, and he has some good relationships in the industry, which is paramount actually. It's really important to have those relationships to start off with, because I think it's quite high. The barrier to entry is quite high if you don't have those connections, and I think that's what was actually counted in our favor quite heavily. And as an engineer, he sort of liked sticking to the technical stuff, and everything that he didn't like sort of managed to become mine. So I was looking after the finance and the marketing and the HR, I guess. There were only 5 of us. So at the time, so HR wasn't really a hard job. And the technical aspects and the sales he was focusing on, and those were the lanes he was working on. And as the business grew, I think by the time he stepped out, a lot of those there was more people available to take on some of those lanes. So it wasn't just sort of here's yours, here's son, here's all the stuff that I was doing. It was some of it got palmed off to other people and not just to me.
Working with family is difficult. My ex-wife worked for me for 5 hours, or we worked together for 5 hours. Yeah, no, true story. True story. I was like, if we're going to save our marriage, this is not going to work. It didn't work at the end of the marriage. But what advice do you have for families that work together? There's got to be some learnings that you picked up along the way. There's some do's and don'ts.
Yeah, so my wife also worked for me for a short while. I think it was one day. It was something like that as well. It was like
Mine decided to go home early, so that's
yeah. I was
part
like,
of the fire.
you know what? Yeah, she didn't like. I suppose I didn't do it very well. I was probably barking orders and, can you do this? Can you do that? And she's like, oh, you don't tell me what to do. And I was like, oh,
at least you said, can you? I think maybe I said, please do this or do this. That may have led to my demise.
Yeah. So no, with regards to family, I think I was quite lucky. So my dad and I get along really well. We don't have, we've almost, both of us are not that big on, I guess, confrontation. So we try and talk it out way before. As soon as something bothers us, we sort of raise it quite quickly, and we can sort of see eye to eye. So I think we're quite lucky there. There was never really an issue with regards to misunderstandings, or there's obviously some things that you as a family that you bring in. Family's irritating sometimes, the backstory, so you can when they're late for something, it wasn't because there was traffic, it's because they didn't bloody wake up, those kinds of things. You can kind of keep that to yourself. And my brother was working with us for a while, and that was fine. He didn't report directly to me, which I think was probably a good thing. He was reporting elsewhere in the business, and he was just an employee in terms of reporting wise and coming to work. So that was kind of smooth. I think that worked well, because I think if we were working in each other's space, there would probably be some sibling rivalry, history stuff that you go and fetch. I think having family working in the business is fantastic, because there's all that history of, I guess, the values that the family has had, and all the knowledge and all the reason why we do this doesn't have to be explained. There's nobody that works as hard as family in the business, in my opinion. Everybody, at the middle of the night, you can tell them, wake up, get up, do this, shovel shit, carry that, whatever it is. and they sort of there because it's not just for themselves. They're doing it for themselves and for the rest of their family.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think that's pretty. Yeah, I like family in the business, but some of the stories I've heard of other family businesses are horrific.
Well, it sounds like y'all got along quite well.
Yeah.
Your dad and and then your brother was kind of, it sounds like he was running and he was an employee in a different department. That transition between, when the slow cook the frog, as you described, right? It sounds like, if we think about leadership as either co-leading, the two of y'all leading together, or hierarchical, him being the boss, you being right under him, and then it eventually going, was there a period of y'all co-leading, or was it, you know what I mean? That cooking the frog, I want to get into a little
It's
bit.
just listening to the structure is always hindsight, and then when I go and have a look at how we did it, we weren't actually that intentional. I think we were a bit clueless. Well, not a little bit. We were clueless. We sort of were trying to find our way and wing it as we go. There was, I guess, our structure was quite flat because there weren't that many people that many years ago. I think there were around about 20 or 25 or so. So we didn't really need that much hierarchical structure. It was sort of task-based, role-based. You go do you, and when that becomes a problem, ultimately it would roll up to my dad, I guess. So there wasn't really co-leading. From a strategical point, that was always him until he stepped out, and then that role swapped over. So so co-leading strategically wise didn't happen. That was always him, but just general business management stuff. I think we were probably we were sharing a lot of that role. So when he would go and leave, I would cover for him, and if vice versa, those kinds of things.
What we find with our clients, Ian, is that when organizations have clear, defined roles, duties, responsibilities, and a very clear understanding of compensation, like those are the top areas. When those are nailed down and understood by everyone, it seems to eliminate a lot of the issues in the family dynamic.
Yeah.
So we work.
There's the family dynamics just between each other, but then also the employees, right? The employees could be massively confused. Who am I supposed to report to here? Who's my boss? I remember, when I was first working at a CPA firm, there's like 5 different partners. Everybody's trying to give me, things to do. And I hated it because there was all these different bosses and they weren't really talking very well. And that's in a non-family business,
Yeah, I think it's a challenge I think a lot of businesses have, because they've got, if you don't have especially even a flat structure and there's no clear defined roles, as you say. And I don't think there was, to be honest. I think it was sort of when you start out and when you just jump in where the work needs to get done. You sort of see a hole, and it's not part of anybody's job description, or it's a new thing. It needs to get done. Do it. You're the family member, and that was the assumption. Like there were employees that had clear roles and what they needed to do, but as the business starts, new roles appear as you grow, hopefully, and you don't have those people, and the roles are usually quite temporary. You need somebody to go to a conference. We don't have any salespeople. Who's going to do that? I'll go. I'll give it a go. Good or bad, or know what I'm doing. No idea.
I want to get out of the house.
Get out the house.
I hired an executive assistant years ago, and the job description, at the end of a job description, it said walk the dog, and also anything else. I may have forgotten things, so the additional things that I'll add. She goes, "Oh, what kind of dog do you have?" I said, "I don't have a dog." She goes, "Why'd you put it on the job description?" I said, "Because if I get a dog, I don't want to have a discussion that's part of your job description." It's everything is in your job description.
Whatever else the executive wants.
Exactly.
Or whatever he can dream up. There's a good one.
For most entrepreneurs, you're dreaming up something every other day.
Exactly. You have kids. How old are your kids, Ian?
Yeah, I got 3 kids. I've got a 16-year-old girl and a 14-year-old boy and another 11-year-old girl.
Okay, so you've got a little bit of time. Is it your hope that one day they might join the family business?
I don't know. I was thinking, everybody was asking me the other day, so, how are you going to deal with boyfriends that arrive? And,
Hey, you
I gave
work
it a
with
bit.
minds, they can disappear very easily.
Yeah, my initial reaction was, I'm probably going to have to, start thinking about that. But taking my eldest into account, I think by the time a boyfriend walks into that door, I'm going to shake his hand. I was like, dude, I can't believe you're putting up with this. Well done. So
Thank God you're here.
yeah, so I would love for them to come into the family business, right? I don't want to force them to do stuff or something that they wouldn't want to. And I hear mumblings from my son. He's got plans definitely to join the family business. He's like, yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I'm like, okay, that sounds cool. It's not, but I have a feeling that he only sees, I only talk to him about when I'm traveling or when we're going out to lunch or when we're going to see a client or, the exciting stuff. You don't tell him about the dark place where you fear to tread. So no, I would love for them to join. It'd be great. I'm not
Oh,
sure about the
you're
dynamic
good at
there.
bottling it up then. I'm an open book. If something's killing me, like everybody's gonna hear about it.
Yeah, no, they internalize any trouble I bring home. So if it hasn't been a good day, you keep it quiet. If it's a good day, you're like, yeah, good day. The rest of the time, you just keep it to yourself.
Gotcha.
Otherwise, they get worried and they want to ask. They're asking questions about, can you cope and how are you going to do this and who's going to help you sort this problem out? And at that point, I'm just trying to not go and cry in a little corner. So yeah, try and put it off.
And give us some perspective. We kind of skipped right into, the meat of our discussion today, but give us a little bit of perspective on the size of your company, when you kind of began to take it over 12 years ago and how you've grown it up to today.
If only it wasn't, if only it was just me, right? So I quickly figured out, yeah, if I was the smartest person in the room, we had a serious problem. So when I took over from my dad, there was about 25 people, I think. And when I joined, we were 6. So it had already grown quite significantly then. And that was I joined in 2002. So what was that? 10 years on, 2012. Yeah, so it was about 10 people or 10 years that I'd been around, or slightly less. By the time I took over, there were about 25, 26 people. And we're now, I think our last head count is 142-ish. Minewareans, as we call them. Wow. They're sitting all over the place. We've got we've got team members sitting in India, Ireland, various parts of the country. We were working very much from a particular office-based setup in Johannesburg, and that has subsequently morphed into something more of a hybrid setup of a business. And we were only focusing on the South African market at that time, purely because there was more than enough market to take and to grow into. And as of late, the last 2-3 years, we've been focusing more on an international level. We got clients in Canada and Southern Africa, Zambia, Zimbabwe, a bit of Namibia, and hopefully soon we'll be in Australia. For us to pop over on a 24-hour continental support base. That's the discussion we had yesterday. Who's going to pick up the phone in the middle of the night?
A lot of mining in Australia. A lot of mining.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So it's strange because they're different markets, and we're certainly learning a lot. There's the African market is a different mining sector to the Canadian and the entities. So we've had to change quite a bit of our interface and our way of approaching the markets. They way more. I think it's the mining in those first world countries are on a high level. So what one person would do in Australia, it would take about 20 people in Africa to do. Purely because of the education level being slightly lower, the tech savviness is less, and the labor costs are much cheaper. So it's, you don't need to employ the graduate. You can just employ 10 of these guys and they can do the same heavy lifting. They just need to be checked on and managed correctly. So it's a different market, but we're very excited to go into those places. It's great.
Now, Ian, we work with clients to figure out kind of two steps. First is, God forbid something were to happen to the leader tonight. Does the organization survive? What plans, what processes have been put in for the organization to survive, not only for the family ongoing, but also for all the employees and customers and everything else. And then on the personal side, you've grown tremendously. On the organizational side, where do you think you stand as far as readiness if you weren't there tomorrow to answer questions?
Yeah, good question. That is, for many years, that was quite a barrier for us to get new clients because we were so small. I think that's, especially in a corporate level, the clients we deal with are, so we just B2B, right? So all our clients are blue chip listed businesses. And many times we would be pitching for the business that are, our competition from Australia or Canada or US are pitching for the same business. They are 3 times the price, easy. Our product is better, if not similar. And we would end up not getting that work because we were just too small. And, you're a one-man band, although, there were 6 of us, but they would say, the risk is too high to take, especially at the level of software that we deliver. It's really operational stuff. You can't put it, you're not going to cast it to chance and hope if your whole business is pivoting on the software. So it was a big problem in the beginning. So we, over the last, I think, especially from the time I took over from my dad, slowly but surely putting those things in place so that if I do step in front of the proverbial bus or decide to become a monk, the systems are in place. It is literally one item that that I palmed off at the beginning of this year, and that was payments, authorizing payments to on a monthly basis. But everything else can be handled by everybody else, and there is now somebody else that can manage the payments. I think that might just be my personality, is always held on to the payments because then I feel significant. But I don't, it's certainly not reliant on me to run it anymore. But I wish I could say it was easy. It was hard. It was really hard.
Very hard.
Yeah.
Giving away or delegating those tasks, because they're usually quite menial tasks, right? They're not rocket science stuff. They sort of signatures and approving stuff and making payments, which really anybody else could do. It's just me holding on to it, trying to justify
collecting cash and spending money is the lifeblood of a company, right? So it's very natural to hold on to it until you're confident in the team around you, or if you have enough controls within the company so that there's not, internal theft or something like that. I mean, that's extremely common and advised.
And 80% of businesses suffer employee dishonesty losses. So, I even understand how the game's played. I was in the insurance business for decades, and I got popped myself for 6 figures. It's like, I know how the game's played. I know what to look for. I know how to put in the controls, and I still got nailed with it.
Yeah, no, it is a fear of, it is a fear. The word is probably, strong enough. It's just been that, I think it's the relinquishment of control of a pivotal part of that business.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, but luckily, so it's not, I didn't just palm it to one person. So there's now, hopefully there needs to be a multitude of dishonest people for it to not work. It's not just,
you brought up 2 things. Anyway. You brought up 2 things that I really loved. I want to dive in a little bit deeper. Like, one's the fact, right, that you're in the business you're in, it's a big capital investment on your software by the client. And so it's a risk in going to a smaller business. The great thing about a family business, it's almost like this built-in redundancy that this company is going to be around longer than others, right? Your brother is not just going to quit on you like some other employees, not just going to give you 2 weeks notice, right? So it's kind of it's something that you can lean on even when you're smaller to pitch to some of these bigger deals. Like, hey, I'm small today, but I'm not going to be small tomorrow, and I have the redundancy that you need. So that's a very interesting thing that you said. And then additionally, that because of the nature of your business, it kind of, as y'all are getting bigger, it gives you kind of a natural moat of sorts, right? So it's harder for the smaller guys to kind of come and compete with you, and I'm thinking now to your kids, they might not appreciate what a moat is just yet, but like they kind of see you having fun. But it's something in the leadership development as they're, brainstorming all kinds of business ideas, kind of describing. I don't know if you've consciously spoken about that to them. Obviously, it sounds like your son's already a little bit interested, but the natural moat that is actually extremely rare that y'all have built up in the business that you have.
Oh, yeah, I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
It's sort of always been my dad used to call it his other little boy. You've got three sons, because it's just myself and my brother, and he had three kids. It was his two sons and his business, that they all needed the same amount of attention and love and nurturing and consideration for stuff. I often think about, because my mom was an entrepreneur originally. My dad only started the business when he was 50, or when he was 50 years of age. And before that, he was a corporate guy. And I remember watching my mom struggle through, trying to get a business going, and the time and hours and the dedication she put into it. And it was a lot. She had a marketing business, all hours of the day kind of stuff. And I was wondering how my children, I don't think my kids are getting that kind of that grit. I don't think we certainly didn't struggle as much as my dad and my mom did when I was growing up. We certainly not struggling in that way financially. And I wonder if that contributed to the grit that I suddenly created, or the relationship I had with money, that I'm not sure that they have. We went bankrupt once when I was 14, and it was a profound moment when I realized that this money stuff is not just a thing that comes and goes, that mom and dad get and go. It's pretty bloody important. We need to make sure that we've got this stuff. We need to make sure that we've got enough backup so that when the dry season comes, we've got enough to sort of tide us through. And I think that's a lot of the moat that you're talking about, is also the confidence to have that money sitting there, as opposed to blowing it on growth, or because there is, right? And our business is also debt free. I think it's also it's holding us back from growing that fast, but it might also just be that moat item that you're talking about.
I love you. I love this conversation, because it initially started with like kind of a strategic moat, but now what you're describing is also a moat of wisdom and knowledge, right? Of your generation 2, your kids being generation 3, the history of the company and how you value money, going through bankruptcy. These are extremely wise experiences for
life changing, I guess. They sort of certainly change your perspective on how you manage the money. I'm not saying it's better, or I know what I'm doing. I'm very acutely aware of that it doesn't always go well. There is going to be a dry season, and when it arrives, what are you going to do? Winter is coming. What have you got? So I don't know. I don't even know our kids know that winter is coming. I don't think they've ever seen winter. And
what's interesting, Ian, is that difficult times create strong people. Strong people create great times. Great times create weak people, right? Yes. It's a cycle. And part of what you need to, I look at my kids as well. It's like they're having it easier than I had it. And I don't know if that's better. I think I would never change what I went through. And it wasn't horrible. It's just, I just learned how to hustle. I learned how to get grit. I learned how to get determination and never quit. You don't do that unless you're not, it wasn't great times. It was good times. But it developed. I wouldn't be who I am today if I had not gone through that process.
Yeah. You get forced to innovate because the resources aren't available. I mean, you need this, go out and do it. You want more money, you want to buy the stuff. Yeah. Make a plan. You don't come to me and ask for it.
Most board of advisors or board of directors is created in that transition from Gen 2 to Gen 3, or Gen 3 to Gen 4, because they don't necessarily know many times the original founder, nearly as much in that direct story. And so the board of advisors, board of directors can help give that coaching to the younger generation as time goes on, even though they might not be very active in the day to day. So something to kind of think about is as those years, I mean, they're teenagers right now, you know, it's not like it's going to happen in the next 3 years, but just it's something that's very common with operations as they go on.
You know what's going to be difficult, Trevor, for Ian to create this to the next generation?
What's that?
The type of business that he's in, of how specific it is. It's a recurring revenue model. There are going to be firms, I'm sure they've already have been, that are going to throw out large sums of money.
Yeah.
To acquire you. That's going to be that's what's going to.
Where are they?
They're coming in. They're coming for you. They love recurring business.
Especially with the kind of the mode, you know, and niche nature of your business. Well, and that brings up an entirely different conversation, right? Of, you know, the great thing about a family business is the values that you spoke of at the top of the call that y'all just inherently know, and you picked up for your father and working together and having those values. One of the really super positive things in continuing to not exit and pass down the business to the next generation is those kind of get further embraced, further enhanced and documented. Is that anything you kind of think about, you know, as far as potentially passing down or exiting?
I have thought about it. I think I would probably think about it more once my kids are out of school. When I understand, I mean, as I said, I'd love for them to join, but I don't want them to join because they think they have to, because I want them to. Because you can easily get stuck in it for the rest of your life, right? It's a fact, you know, it's not something you're going to step out of without disappointing people in your family. And that I don't want to have that conversation, or I don't want them to even feel that way. So I think once they are out of school and they have a better idea of what they want to do, because the opportunities are within the business, certainly. I mean, even it's now at a point where, you know, you can go into finance or to marketing or HR or whatever item you're interested in. We will be able to we have that available within the family business. I want them to come and say that they want to do that. So yeah, I've heard the aspirations have moved from everything to being a bead weaver on an island to a millionaire Ferrari driver. Funds unknown. Okay, right. Fund source unknown. Like,
sponsorship dollars.
Well, you know, look, if they really do want to join the family business, I mean, going to university, coming out of university, and then spending 3 years at a mining company, learning from the perspective of the customer, extremely valuable.
No, it'll definitely be that. They certainly. I think it's got to do with that grit item as well, and also the connection and understanding customer service, which is basically what it boils down to at the end of the day. Yes, there's lots of, you know, lots of value chain items in between, but customer service and giving them 2 or 3 years to burn somewhere else and spend those lessons learning and what it's like to work for a boss that is a demanding boss. You know, I'd like not to be a nice person. They need to be rough, and you know, when they're walking in, they must go, "Wow, this place is awesome. I want to stay here forever," because they've had a rough time elsewhere.
And sometimes you can make that a policy, right? You can't join the company without working somewhere else for, say, 3 to 6 years.
Yeah.
And then you can be eligible to join the company depending on your skill sets. And then you could also, I mean, you're kind of playing a chess match, but if you've got a friend that has another company that's a real hard driver, you know,
right. And
we all know a couple of them, and say, "Hey, go work for Thor." He's I
had to do that with Terry. I had to do that with my son in college. He wasn't taking college seriously, so I set up a system where, son, you pay for college and you get A's and B's and you get reimbursed. And I said, oh, and by the way, I'm not reimbursing you, or buddy Abe. I said, you have to submit the scores to Abe, and Abe will then disperse the funds.
I love that.
And he's like, "Oh, wow."
And Abe can be intimidating.
No, that's great. Yeah, because then then it's not there's no heartstrings or emotions being
exactly.
Pure transaction.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the thing with my kids is they know which buttons to push, right? Which knob to turn, yes, if I turn this at the right time, I can squeeze a lot more out of Dad.
That does happen.
Well, kind
They
of
are
looking
quite
back,
entrepreneurial anyway.
looking back on this conversation and, your, the kind of journey with your, and, we actually haven't even spoke about our last time we spoke, we touched on your brother and y'all are doing other investments outside, right? Of the business.
Yeah.
I guess tell us a little bit about that and how y'all are managing the family's outside business, even though you're not the operators.
Yeah, so I guess we as a family we bring opportunities to the table. If we are sitting at a barbecue on a Sunday, or we just have a family meetup, you'd sort of say, geez, I saw this opportunity, or I was talking to a mate about this thing, and this sounds like a good idea. Would you guys be interested? What do you think about it? And well, subsequently, my brother stepped out of our business, and we started another business, which is a trailer rental business. Like a trailer you put on the back of your car, and you move houses, and it's sort of a one-way business. You can sort of it's like U-Haul, really. You hitch it up, you drive somewhere else, and what the appeal about that is it's relatively simple. It's a cash business. You can, in the middle of the night, you don't have to rely on anybody else to help you out. You can change a wheel, you can weld the metal, you can help the customer, and you put your head out the window, you can see the stock. There's no secret stock hidden in multiple locations. And what was really appealing is the expectation is the same from both parties. You know what you're going to get. You're going to get this transaction, and whereas ours is very bespoke. You never quite get what you want because you're imagining it. You don't know what you want, but you know what you don't want. And those are many of our specifications we get. Like, I've got this problem and you need to fix it, but I don't want this. So there's a whole a quagmire of social items that you need to work through, and multiple people sitting in the room. Whereas with a trailer rental business, you've got one person, they've got a story, you have the transaction, there's no negotiation around price, there's the product is right, the price is right. And you get to know people, and you spend a lot of time dealing with people, as opposed to where we sit on the Mineware side, where we certainly have a people aspect, but there's a lot of technical stuff that happens in the background. There's a lot of grinding and building that happens. So my brother gravitates more towards the social aspect of it, and he likes people, so he enjoys the daily interactions with loads of people, building those relationships, and then them leaving. There's no long-term relationship that you have to build. Obviously there is a couple of people that return and those kinds of things, but he certainly gravitates more towards that. And then just general family investments. The cousins, brothers, best friends, roommate is starting this business. Can you come and have a chat to you? And by the time you've had a chat to him, you're like, hey, this was a good business. Oh, do you need a bit of capital? If you've got it, hopefully they're quite cheap. And you're like, yeah, sure, here's a bit of money, and see how that goes. And hopefully give a little bit of advice, decent advice on the way.
What I love about those two businesses, the mining business and the rent of the trailer business, is you don't sell anything. You just rent it. You rent your software every month, and you rent the trailers. Why sell something once when you can rent it every single day? Yeah,
and you're so right. And the other business we have is student housing rentals. It's what we understand.
There's a theme here, Ian.
There is a theme.
You know what that theme is? High multiples.
Yeah. No, we understand. I mean, it does burn my ass when I look at, for instance, my lawnmower in the garage that works twice a month. When the neighbor's got one, that guy's got one, that guy's got one. Why didn't we should have just pulled together and just have this thing work all day at a different house? It just makes more sense. I think some of that might be bubbling through to our businesses and at work, that mindset.
I love
it. Even like in the US, we have Home Depots. They're big, kind of they'll sell lawnmowers, weed whackers, etc. Their highest margin, highest growth division is the rental business.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah. Because you've got the capital, you've got the asset. Now you just need to sweat it, baby. And the better you can get that thing out the door, the faster it gets, the better it gets.
This has been fantastic. I guess, Ian, to wrap it up, are there any kind of, thinking back, on your career with your family, and then other people who be listening to this that are family businesses, right? Either Gen 1,
Yeah.
thinking about including, kids or cousins or brothers in the business. So any kind of advice that you would have for them?
I can give you an experience share. I won't, yeah, I don't think I have decent advice. It's just something I noticed when I implemented a chore system at home for your pocket money. And it actually comes from a book called Barefoot Investor by a guy called Scott Pape. It's about kids and teaching them about money, because I realized my kids had no idea. I just remember the hand coming out going, "Give me money." And it being a defining moment at some point a couple of years ago. And just getting them to think about, what do I need to do to get more money? These are my chores. These are my things. If I don't do them, I don't get the money. If I want more money than what my chores allow me to, what else do I need to think about? Where else can I sort of get this stuff? And when they would get paid, because they get paid weekly, they have to split it up into 3 jars. They've got a smile jar, a spend jar, and a give jar. And a give jar is and you have to put money in all 3 of them. You have to put some money in. You choose the amount, but they have to go into each jar. So there's a give jar, which we give to charity once a month, or once every 2 months. We go to the local animal welfare and we sort of buy them food. And I remember the first time going, and my son not having, he didn't put a lot of money into his give jar. He just spent it and blew it on stuff. And his 2 sisters were better at it. And as we got there, you buy little bags of dog food and you give it to the dogs. So you take your money, buy a bag of dog food, and you go and give it to the actual dogs. And his little bag that he could buy was about this big, and his sisters were about this big. And I remember him digging. He stood there and he went, no, wait. He took out his wallet and he started forking out more out of his spend money that he had planned to blow on games or whatever it was that he wanted. And I could just see the mind shift happening in all of them. They could start understanding the value of a chocolate bar, or, I want this shirt, and they would see the price and then they go, wow, that's expensive. Whereas previously their minds were just, I want this thing, make it happen. I don't care. I can't tell you the price between a chocolate bar and a racing car. It has no value for me. So that was quite cool. I think that was, for me, it started getting them into the idea of how can I make myself wealthy or available to do more work, as opposed to just expecting stuff to fall out of the sky.
I love that. Barefoot Investor, cool. You kind of got some of that from that method?
Yeah, no, definitely. No, it all came from there. I think especially my son, is very, very intuitive in figuring out new and wonderful ways to make money. He actually sold, about 2 weeks ago, he saw some of our flowers. We had flowers that were about to wilt some roses. And I was busy throwing them out. And he went, wait, there's a good couple in here. So he took 3 or 4 of them and walked up the road and was selling them door to door. Wilting roses. Here's a rose that's got, you maybe got
this kid's got some potential. He's got some potential.
Now we just got to teach him how to rent the rose. You can have the rose for a day. I'm going to pick it up.
Take a picture with the rose.
Now we're talking. Now we're talking.
So Ian, it's funny, when we were growing up, right, we paid for everything with cash, right? And when you go to a casino, they take your cash and give you chips because there's not an emotional attachment to the chips. Well, today the kids have they're disconnected to the cash because they have a card.
Absolutely.
The card, it's like, oh, it's a card, it's a card, it's a card. As a kid, when you're counting out your quarters or you're counting out your dollars, it's like you really start to understand the value of it.
Yeah, and when they don't do their chores, I sort of fork out what they're supposed to get, and then I take it away, back off the table, saying, oh, you didn't make your bed, and you didn't take out the trash, and you didn't feed the dogs, so we'll just minus that off, and you can see them going, oh, I had that, and it went away.
Yeah.
No, it makes a big difference if you work in cash, for sure.
Yeah. We had our kids, they had a portion that they had to give to someone as well, and we actually took taxes, which drove my wife crazy.
Ooh,
it was the center of a lot of fights. And I said, look, you have to understand, this is how your life is going to look like. This is, you've got a budget for this. You need to take a portion. If you don't put a portion away for your taxes come due.
Well, that's not fair.
I'm sorry.
Kids know. Uncle Thor says you now need to start paying taxes. Sorry.
That's right.
And this has been a
Awesome.
fantastic
This is awesome.
conversation, man.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.